Hello everyone, and welcome to our Q2 2022 quarterly release webinar. My name is Jordan Schutz, and I work here at Twilio as a Senior Product Marketing Manager of Developer Experience, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. In this webinar, we are going to be showing off new Twilio and SendGrid products that are in a variety of different launch stages. And as a result of these products being in a variety of different launch stages, we want to make sure that you make all of your purchasing decisions based on currently available products. In this developer webinar, we are going to be covering all of the new exciting releases and features coming to you this quarter from the Twilio customer engagement platform. We're going to be chatting with the product managers and developer advocates that are responsible for developing these new features, so you can get the inside scoop on why they are important and how you can use them. One feature that I'm super excited to show off later in this webinar is the Twilio Dev Phone, which allows you to receive inbound calls and SMS messages and make outbound calls directly on your development machine. Additionally, we're going to be showing off Twilio Pay, a brand new way to securely accept payments over a voice call. This is being used by IVRs to build self-service payment experiences and by call centers that need a way to securely capture payment information from callers. But that's not it. We're covering many more releases in this webinar, so stay tuned in, leave your questions in the comments section, and enjoy the show. At Twilio, we want to empower you to create engaging experiences for your customers and own all of the data to drive personalized, real-time customer engagement at scale. As a developer myself, I believe that with Twilio, if you can imagine it, you can build it. But a lot of developers and customers ask us, well, what is the Twilio customer engagement platform and what can I do with it? Well, the Twilio customer engagement platform, it's not a single product that Twilio offers. In fact, it's how we talk about the combined value of all that the Twilio platform offers you. Yes, Twilio is the leader in CPaaS, and now with Segment, it's also the leader in CDP. But when you bring these two things together, along with the extensibility and programmability that is so core to Twilio's DNA, you're able to know your customers better, and you're able to reach them how they expect to be engaged with. And you can do this all with the flexibility and agility that you'd expect from Twilio. Now, the result of this is that you turn your customers into passionate advocates for your brand. And you can do this all through our powerful suite of APIs and developer tools. In this webinar, we're going to be focused on extensibility, which allows developers like you to harness the power of our APIs to create your ideal customer experience. I want to share a short story of how Crypto.com CTO Matthew Chan used the Twilio customer engagement platform to foster customer trust with account security and reliability. Crypto.com worked to implement Twilio's programmable messaging APIs to issue one-time passwords to verify new customer IDs and securely onboard new users. Crypto.com also used Twilio's messaging APIs to issue 3DS verification codes for their crypto Visa debit cards. This provided their customers with an extra layer of protection and ID authentication for their payment transactions. Our APIs ultimately help Crypto.com prevent payment fraud and unauthorized transactions. Additionally, Crypto.com implemented Twilio's SendGrid email API as an ID verification method in the form of a magic link, where users can authenticate their account without the need of a password. With dynamic templating within the SendGrid product, this allowed Crypto.com to easily integrate security measures like anti-phishing codes into their product experience. This allows customers to verify the authenticity of their emails that they receive in their inbox. As you can see by Crypto.com's implementation of Twilio, we provide companies and the developers all of the channels they need to create the ideal experience for their customers. Whether it's through messaging, email, voice, or video, the Twilio customer engagement platform truly helps developers create the experiences they dream of. And with that, we're super excited to be here with Ricky Holtz to announce the public beta of the Twilio Dev Phone. Ricky, you're a senior developer advocate and you help create this new developer tool. And as a developer myself, I'm really excited to see how this tool will help speed up development when I don't have easy access to a phone number. So Ricky, what inspired you to create this tool?
Yeah, there are a lot of use cases, and we're even learning about more now that we've released the Dev Phone. But we had three that were pretty core to like the inception of it. One was international developers. There's a lot of regulatory overhead with getting a Twilio phone number. And so when you don't have that phone number and you want to do development, the dev phone can kind of be a substitute in those scenarios. There's also just scenarios where you don't have great cell coverage.
Yeah.
So again, you're just like struggling with reaching out to like your personal phone number. So another kind of scenario that we were thinking of. And then the final one is just like when you're on your couch or like you're at your desk, your phone's in another room and you don't want to go get it. The dev phone in all of these scenarios just allows you to work on your local development environment and do Twilio development right there.
That's super awesome that the new Dev Phone, it solves so many potential development challenges when you're building Twilio applications in different regions or with like poor cell coverage. Like I personally, I travel a lot internationally, and what I've noticed is that the internet connection or the Wi-Fi, it can be good, but then I'll sometimes like be roaming or I won't have good cell service. So I think like everyone out there and all the developers would love to see a demo of you using the Twilio Dev Phone and it working in action. Can you show us what it looks like?
I would love to show you.
Cool.
So here, we can go to my laptop here. And so I'm going to start in the documentation actually, because one of the things is that this is all based around the Twilio CLI. So I have the Twilio CLI installed, and then I'm just going to go here, Twilio plugins install, Twilio Labs plugin Dev Phone, and I'll just pop that into my terminal here. And this is really just installing the dev phone.
Yeah.
So that's going to run, it's just installing all the dependencies for this, and it's going to take a moment here. But once that gets installed, we'll be able to actually run the dev phone on the CLI. So we're linking dependencies now. This is, just for context, the Twilio CLI allows us to create plugins. So that's what we've done here, is like install this as a plugin on the Twilio CLI. And there we go.
And installed. That's awesome.
All right, so now we're gonna run Twilio Dev Phone. So we have Twilio for the Twilio CLI, and then Dev Phone for the Dev Phone plugin.
Okay.
And when we run that, more setup is gonna happen. But now this is kind of the magic sauce here, because we're using a lot of different Twilio products. And that's the thing, any Twilio developer could build this, because it's really like creating a conversation using the Conversations API, creating a sync list using the Sync API. So any developer can do this, but the dev phone is automating this process for you. You don't have to build your own dev phone anymore. We're using another Twilio Labs product called the Serverless Toolkit to deploy a function service to handle inbound communications. And then when everything's done, you can see here that the dev phone has just launched in the browser.
Awesome.
So yeah, we've got a dev phone ID here that just like uniquely identifies this dev phone and kind of associates the different resources on your account with that dev phone. And the first thing that it's going to ask you to do is select a phone number, something that makes this dev phone addressable by like other Twilio phone numbers. So I've got a 415 number here, and I just choose to use that number. And now the dev phone is configured with that number. So now the big kind of question is like, okay, like what now?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do with the dev phone? And so we can handle inbound and outbound communications. Let's check some like inbound communications. So I'm gonna hop over to the Twilio console, and I'm gonna find a phone number that I want to just like, I just want to configure this phone number to handle inbound communications. So I'm using that 415 number on the dev phone right now, but here's this 575 phone number. Okay, so it doesn't have anything configured on it, really, it's just like the default. So I'm gonna use another developer tool called Bceptor. Sorry, it's developer tools all the way down today. So Bceptor just allows me to like configure an endpoint to just like see HTTP requests as they come in. So I'm gonna create this, devphone.free, yeah, so I'll copy that and then put it here into the webhook here. So when a call comes in, I just want that payload to go to Bceptor. And then here, when a message comes in, same thing. I'm just gonna push all this to Bceptor. Okay, so I've got this kind of ready to go. And now let's hop back over to the dev phone. I'm gonna take that phone number, plug it in here.
Remove the spaces.
Remove the spaces, get it in E164 format. And let's just try sending a message. So, you know, let's not do a hello world. This is Twilio, ahoy. Okay, so already we can see that that Bceptor is like getting a message here. We can see what the payload looks like. And so anybody who's familiar with Twilio development will know that this is like one of the common processes. So right now, nothing is configured. So what we're seeing is like the kind of default for Twilio. But when you're developing with an application, you can like actually see them like whether things are working. You'll get this post request on your own infrastructure. And so that's really the promise of the Dev Phone here. We're actually creating like an outbound message that will then be like processed by your application.
No, this is amazing for developers. Like congratulations, by the way, on the beta release. This is like super exciting. So what can all the developers out there, what can they expect for the full release?
Okay, so there's still a couple of features that we want to implement here. One nice thing about the Dev Phone is like it will tear down, so we'll get rid of everything on the account that we've created. But there's still a lot of like features that still need to be developed. One is multi-tenancy support for. So if you want to have multiple Dev Phones on one account, we just need to handle that a little more cleanly. And then one other thing is just figuring out like a responsive design for the Dev Phone. I realized like after the fact that like half screen mode makes a lot of sense. You kind of have your application in one screen and like the Dev Phone in another. So we need to get it responsive. But this is also like an exciting part of this. It's fully open source. So if people want to go in, help us like reach those next milestones, or if you just have an idea for like what could be like a cool feature for the Dev Phone, people can go in and contribute.
Really? So for all the developers out there then that are interested in contributing, then how can they actually do that? And like what does the tech stack look like?
Yeah, so you can hop over to our GitHub where you will see that our tech stack is like, this is a React application for the most part. And then of course there's like the Twilio CLI layer, which is kind of like our server. And then after that, it's really just like a lot of Twilio APIs. So it's also a great way to like learn Twilio applications, how they interact with the React, like front end and back end parts of Twilio. And then finally, we do have an Airtable form. So if people don't want to like create a GitHub issue, they can go ahead and just submit feedback via Airtable.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that it was all fully responsive. How did you actually build that fully responsive functionality?
Right, so it's not responsive yet, but the responsiveness will be handled with Paste, because the UI is all built with Twilio Paste.
No, that's great to hear that you're using it, because we actually launched the Paste framework in the Q4 release webinar back in 2021, and it's an open source framework, right, that for React developers that anyone can use if they're trying to build beautiful UIs in their application. So that's awesome to hear that you're using it in the Dev Phone. So thanks so much for the awesome demo of the Twilio Dev Phone. Where can developers go to learn more and try it out themselves?
Yeah, I think the first place to go is the Twilio docs, and then there you can find the Airtable form. You can get a link to the GitHub, and I believe that there's a link on screen that people can click to head over to the documentation.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ricky. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, that was a lot of fun going over the Twilio Dev Phone with Ricky. I'm here with Justin, and you work here at Twilio as a senior product marketing manager, and you're gonna be covering the brand new, exciting generic pay connector release. So thank you so much for being here, Justin.
And thanks for having me, Jordan.
Cool, and so before we get started on the generic pay connector, I'd love to learn a little bit more about Twilio Pay. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Twilio Pay is our secure bridge from Twilio to help our customers take payments over the phone.
That's awesome. And later on, we're gonna be jumping into a demo of how Twilio Pay works. And Justin, you've built an example application using Studio that shows how an IVR application might use Twilio Pay to integrate payments.
Yeah, I'm gonna show folks using Studio how to take a payment using Twilio Pay.
So Justin, this new release, it allows you to use any payment processor with Twilio Pay, is that correct?
Yeah, the new generic pay connector, now in public beta, enables you to use literally any payment processor in the world using the generic pay connector.
That's awesome. And in the past, I know that we had like some limited selection of payment processors, is that correct?
Yeah, and not only that, we were limited in terms of the types of transactions you could do. So you could only do charge and tokenize, and you couldn't pass any data to the payment processor. Starting today, you're able to do that.
Wow, that's really exciting. So I also am aware that with Twilio Pay, it allows you to take PCI compliant payments over the phone.
Yeah, and the best part about that is you don't have to become PCI compliant yourselves. So you can take payments over the phone in a PCI compliant manner without having to do any of the PCI compliance under the hood. All you do is send us how much you'd like to charge the person on the phone, and we take the payment for you.
That's super exciting. So one thing that I'm really looking forward to jumping into later on is the demo to see how Twilio Pay works. But first, you briefly touched on that there are some customers that are using Twilio Pay that they've been using it for a while now, right? This isn't a new thing. So one of the customers that stood out to me when we were chatting offline was Inbox Health. And they're really one of the leading players in the healthcare billing solution space. And so Justin, it would be great to kind of hear more about Inbox Health and how they integrated it specifically with Twilio.
Yeah, I'd love to share this story with you. Inbox Health is awesome because they're creating a very specific, customized, and tailored experience for their customers to take payments over the phone.
And so what I'm aware of is that Inbox Health, they were struggling with a very specific issue, and that was around support calls. So they were getting thousands of support calls a day. Customers were having a really tough time using their online system to make payments. So could you explain how Twilio Pay was integrated with Inbox Health to basically streamline that payment process for their customers?
Yeah, Inbox Health is interesting because they have a great online payment experience, but for their customers, not every customer was able to make the specific payment they needed to make. And so they built, using Twilio Pay, a voice payment service. And so what this has empowered their customers to do is 61% of their customers now pay using the IVR before they even speak to an agent. And this has enabled 800 more customers a month to use Twilio Pay, and those 800 calls are not support calls from an agent. And in the first 3 months, this enabled over 100K of payments to be taken over the phone without talking to an agent.
That's awesome. And that's insane that like Inbox Health, they basically created their own IVR. They were going to create their own IVR system from scratch, but then they used Twilio Pay, and that streamlined the entire process for them. And then they also added the Amazon Poly functionality, which made Twilio Pay just the obvious choice for them. So that's a really interesting story. When I first heard about this use case, it was really eye-opening to me to see how customers are implementing Twilio Pay and how it's basically providing a seamless customer experience for these companies. And especially in the healthcare industry, most of these standard billing systems, they're designed to not really care about the patient. So let's say if you don't pay, you just get sent to collections, and there's not many easy ways to, let's say, pay for your bill or get adjustments in these unique situations. So I think that it's really important and game-changing that Inbox Health was able to integrate Twilio Pay and create that amazing experience for their patients to experience healthcare billing.
Yeah, and what I love about this use case is they got to build exactly what they need without having to build all the underlying systems themselves. They saved months in development and were able to build this amazing customer experience.
No, that's great. And from what I've seen from the Twilio Pay documentation is it's really streamlined and it's easy to use. So I'm assuming that Inbox Health was able to benefit from all those things when they were integrating with us. So I'd love for you to jump into some details around the generic pay connector and chat with developers on how they can maybe implement Twilio Pay themselves.
Getting started with Twilio Pay is really straightforward. All you need to do is to connect your payment processor or provider securely with Twilio in the console. And then when you have a voice call, send us the TWIML to say that you want to take a payment.
So what connectors then are available today? And also with the TWIMLs, right? You can integrate your own infrastructure, correct?
Absolutely. You need to respond to a voice call with a webhook with TWIML. And we're agnostic where you host that TWIML, on the internet, through an IP, through anywhere we can address. So it could be Studio Functions or your own application.
Let's go over maybe some of the architecture. Could you talk a little bit about the architecture for Twilio and how that works, or for Twilio Pay?
Yeah, it's really straightforward. All you need to do is you have a voice call. You have to tell us what you want to do with the voice call. And so when you respond with TWIML to say we'd like to take a payment, at that point you specify how much and what type of transaction, and then we do that for you while the customer's on the phone, and then return the result for you.
Since we've kind of gone over the architecture, how it works, I think we'd love to see a demo of Twilio Pay and the generic pay connector working in action. Do you want to pull that up for us?
Yeah, I'd love to jump into Studio. So today, we're going to use Twilio Studio and our pre-built Studio widget for Twilio Pay that makes it really easy. And Studio is our drag and drop visual workflow editor. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to handle the incoming call. So we can see here, we have the incoming call. And humans expect phone calls to be answered. So what we want to do is we want to announce the call and we want to gather the input from the person. And what I've chosen here to do today is to ask if the user says something or no input is going to take them to an agent. So I'm going to say something after the announcement, and then I'm going to pass that call to the Twilio Pay connector. And in this case, I'm using the Stripe pre-built connector, which took me minutes to connect with Stripe. So how much should we take from me today?
Yeah, so I see that it's currently set to $19.99, but let's change it to $25. And I'm assuming that we could obviously just pass an environment variable in here, so that way if they wanted to take a customized payment, they could just implement that.
Absolutely. In this case, we've hard-coded it, but almost everyone you would want to pass a custom amount so that the person pays exactly what they owe.
Got it.
So we're going to save, and then we're going to publish. And then we're going to transition to Ricky's Dev Phone. So we have Ricky's Dev Phone running in the browser, and I've pasted in the number already, and we're going to call it.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for calling today. Are you calling to pay your outstanding balance of $25 today, or is there something else we can help you with?
Make a payment.
Please enter your credit card number.
And so now I'm going to enter the test credentials.
Please enter your expiration date, 2 digits for the month and 2 digits for the year.
And that was just any date in the future, right?
Yep.
Please enter your security code. It's the 3 digits located on the back of your card.
Thank you so much for your payment. Is there anything else we can help you with today?
There you go. It's easy as that.
Yeah, that was an awesome demo. That's super easy, and I think developers are really gonna love this. So if developers wanna try this themselves today and implement it themselves, where can they go to learn more?
Go to twilio.com/pay.
Great. Well, thank you, Justin, for attending the webinar and showing off this new exciting release. Thank you so much for being here.
And thanks for having me.
Well, that was super awesome going over Twilio Pay with Justin. Next up, I'm pleased to announce that Twilio Alarms is now in public beta. I'm here with Bharat and Jyotsna from our product team who have been working really hard on this brand new exciting Twilio Alarms release. So can you both introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jyotsna. I lead our Twilio Analytics and Intelligence Platform products. And this is Bharat, my wonderful colleague.
Thanks, Jyotsna. I'm Bharat. I'm a product manager on the console team. We help developers build and maintain their applications.
So could you tell us about this product, what it is, and why is it valuable to developers? Why do people care about this new alarms feature, and how are our customers using it?
Sure. Twilio Alarms is our new near real-time monitoring and alerting products to really help our customers monitor their Twilio applications and customer communications and make them seamless. The first release, this release that we are talking about, is Twilio Alarms on top of error logs.
Got it. And I thought that we already did something around error logs, so what's new with this new alarms release?
You're right. We did have a version of alerting on top of error logs, but it was not anywhere near real time. So you would have to wait at least a day or a month to get any kind of alerts on top of error logs.
Got it.
But with this new feature now, you can get an alert in minutes as soon as an event happens, and that really lends itself well to operational monitoring as well as proactive action for our customers. And we also made sure that there is a more visible and intuitive user experience to create and manage these alarms.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think that feature is going to be super beneficial to developers that want to get real-time emails and real-time alerts when something goes wrong in their Twilio application. So Bharat, would you be able to explain how some of our current customers are using the Twilio Alarms feature in their app?
Yeah, for sure. So as you know, Twilio customers build apps that support very critical services. For example, one public utility service communicates with over 300,000 people for various things like coordinating service contractors, notifying about electrical outages, and even sending billing information. Another customer, which is a financial services team, sends over 10 million monthly SMSs to their customers. Our customers need to be proactively alerted before errors in their system escalate into serious problems.
What do they care about being alerted about specifically?
Right, so a lot of times it is that they want to be notified about issues that are happening as they happen. So they care about unusual activity like spikes and errors. They also want the right people to be notified at the right time. And that's the service that we provide with Alarms.
That's awesome. So I think that we're really excited to see a demo of the product. So can you two both show us how Alarms works? Sure.
Yeah, let's take it for a run. So first we'll show you how to create an alarm. You go to the Twilio console, you go to the Monitor tab, and then under the Monitor tab, you'll go to Logs, open up Error Logs. On the error log page, you have two ways you can create alarms right on top with the create alarm function, or you go to a specific log event, and then if you right click there, you can see a way to create alarms. So you create alarms. Now we'll go into the create alarm workflow. So first you select which error code you want to be updated about, or it could be any error, any warning. You can actually see the trend of these errors where you can select the date range for which you want to see, and then you can actually say, hey, this should be the threshold I want. So give a numerical threshold, which is the number of these debug events you want to see over a specified time window. So you can say up to 5 minutes. Let's say in this example, you want to make sure that, hey, if you see more than 3 or more events in 5 minutes, you want to be alerted. Then you specify how do you want to be notified. So you can enable the console indicator, which will light up whenever there's an alert. You can enable email notifications. So click that checkbox and you can put in what emails you want to send, where you want to send the emails, or you can decide to enable webhooks and get these events directly into your application.
No, I love the webhooks feature. I feel like a lot of developers are going to find a lot of benefit from integrating with external services.
Absolutely. Finally, give the alarm a friendly name so that you know when you're managing and monitoring the alarm what we're talking about. And that's it, you're done. Now let's look at how to manage an alarm. Maybe first thing you want to do is edit an existing alarm because you want to change something about it. Go to Manage Alarms, Edit Alarm, and now you come to the same page that you saw when creating an alarm. You can change whatever you want around it. Let's say you wanted to change the threshold value or the time period or want to notify somebody else. You can do any of those things here, update it. Let's say I change the alarm threshold to 1, and that's it. You just hit save, you're done.
That's super easy.
Next up, Bharat will show you what happens when an alert actually gets triggered and how could you monitor and see all the alert history on the console.
So we showed 2 ways to set up an email notification or a notification for your alarm. One was email and one was webhook. So what I've done is I set up a webhook on a previously created alarm to show what happens when a webhook is triggered. So we've triggered the alarm, and now we're waiting for that alarm to get sent as an email and as a webhook. So here we can see this function shows that the webhook was successfully sent, and that means the alarm was triggered. Now we can see what it looks like when you get the email notification.
And with this email notification, you mentioned before that this is being sent with Twilio SendGrid, I'm assuming?
Yeah, for sure. This is actually built with Twilio SendGrid.
That's awesome.
And configured. So the email that we see here is built with SendGrid. It gives you a summary of what occurred, which alarm was triggered, what the actual threshold was hit, so you know how bad the incident was, and then you're able to actually go into the console and see the alarm history and alarm history details as well. So let's take a look at that.
No, and this is awesome because as a customer, right, you can get instantly notified via email, like if there's an issue with your Twilio app, so that way you can go in and you can modify or maybe make changes and see what the issue is.
That's right.
That's great.
So what the email takes you to is this page, which is the alarm history instance page. It gives you a summary of what happened, including a chart of the error so you can see the trend, as well as some mitigation steps for that error. So it's a pretty useful page if you're trying to debug something in your application.
That's great.
If we navigate over to the alarms history page, this gives you a list view of all the alarms that were triggered. And if you click the link, it'll take you to that detailed page I showed earlier, so you can get more information about what happened in your system.
I really think this feature is awesome, and I can see how a bunch of developers are going to be really interested in using it. So can you tell us about what's next with the product, and also who is it going to be available to?
Absolutely. So by the time you see this webinar, you will have access to Twilio Alarms in your console. We will be in full public beta.
That's awesome. And is the new system going away at all, or how is that going to work?
Right. So while the new alarm system is in beta, the current system will still be live. By the time we're ready to move alarms into GA, the legacy alerting system will be deprecated, but all the alerts that you've created will be migrated onto the new system, so you won't lose any visibility into your applications.
So when can developers expect the GA release to come out?
We're excited that this product will be generally available in Q4 of this year. Being generally available means it will be scaled out and operationally supported as a Tier 1 product. We will also ensure that the product is GDPR compliant and HIPAA compliant, helping support our customers who are in healthcare or have any other compliance needs around GDPR. And as Bharat mentioned, the legacy alerting system will go away. We will also decommission existing default alerts. So today, every first error of the day, you get a default notification. And what we found is that customers don't really find these default alerts very valuable, so we're not going to migrate them. Instead, we let you do your custom alerts.
So where can developers go to learn more and try it out themselves?
Right. So as I mentioned before, you can try it now, go into the console, navigate to the Monitor tab, and you can create and manage your alarms there. We've also updated all of our Twilio documentation to help you understand how to use the product better.
And for the future, this is our release for Twilio Alarms on top of error logs, but our vision really goes far beyond. So stay tuned for our next set of communications coming up over the rest of the year and next year. We also would love your feedback, so reach out to us. You can create a support ticket by going to Docs and Supports on the console tab, and let us know how the product is working for you. Also, let us know what you'd like to see on our roadmap so we can help prioritize the right set of features.
That's awesome. Well, I think that we're really excited to hear from all the developers out there, their feedback on the product. So feel free to go and file a ticket and reach out and let us know what you think of the product. And we can't wait to see what you all build. Thanks both of you for being here. It was really great to learn about the new Alarms release.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Well, that was awesome to learn about the brand new Twilio Alarms release. I'm super excited to announce that MMS for long text messages is now generally available. I'm excited to be here with Nidhi, who works at Twilio as a staff software engineer, who was responsible for bringing this exciting new release to market. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the introduction, Jordan. I'm really excited to be here and demonstrate what this new feature offers.
Great, so we'd love to hear about it.
So in the SMS world, messages are sent as 140-byte chunks known as segments, which is equivalent to 160 GSM encoded characters or 70 UCS2 encoded characters. What this means is if your message exceeds this limit, then your message will be split into multiple segments.
Got it.
The MMS for long text messages feature allows customers to send long text messages as a single MMS message as opposed to multiple SMS segmented message.
No, this is really awesome, and it sounds like a great feature for developers. So I'd love to just kind of talk through with you maybe some of the advantages of this new MMS for long text messages features. So I think that the first main advantage that I can think of as a developer is that it's going to help save me money by minimizing the volume of messages that are being sent. Is that correct?
Multi-segmented messages are expensive because the customers are billed per segment. With this, you're only billed for one segment.
Yeah, the second one that I would think of is throughput, right? Is you want to maximize your throughput and you want to reduce the amount of number of messages that you're delivering, right?
Correct, yeah. And this is especially useful in the US A2P 10 DLC world where carriers have the imposed daily limits on the message volume.
Got it. And I also see this as also helping to optimize the end user experience, right? Because it's ensuring that all your communications are delivered as a single message instead of having messages potentially being shuffled up or out of order when the receiver is getting the message, right?
Yeah, for sure. And this is crucial at times when messages are sent over smaller carriers, which don't offer proper concatenation of messages. And the messages are delivered and out of order. So it's a very poor end user experience.
Yeah, I see this as being super important for developers, and it's really a game-changing feature. So could you maybe illustrate how some of the customers out there that are using Twilio are now leveraging this new feature to provide their customers with a better end user experience?
Yeah, for sure. So if you look at the screen, I'm showing an example of a long text message consisting of about 350 characters. So the curl request on the top sends the communication in multi-segmented SMS messages, and the red breaks signify the segment separation. So let's look at the bottom, the curl request at the bottom. In order to leverage this new feature and send the entire communication as a single MMS message, all you would need to do is add a new API parameter, send as MMS, and set it to true, and that's it.
Wow, that's really simple. I love it. And I think that there's a ton of use cases out there where this could be super beneficial for developers. So could you maybe share some of the use cases on how current customers are implementing MMS for long text messages?
There are a few examples. The first one being if you're a company that has A2P 10 DLC numbers, then you will want to use this feature to ensure that you don't exceed your throughput limitations. And this is especially useful for companies that send out marketing messages that are long and include emojis, because most likely you'll end up exceeding the limitations. And the second one is if you're an ISV and you have customers who send long text messages, you'll want to use this feature to make sure that the end user experience is optimal. When I say that, what I mean is the message should be delivered in entirety and not in chunks. So an example that comes to mind is when a doctor's office sends notes after an appointment to the customer. It would be ideal if all of the entire note, all the notes are intact and sent in entirety. And finally, and most importantly, this is good for any company from a cost perspective. A sample query that we ran showed that there are about 12 million 3+ segmented SMS messages that are sent to US recipients on a single day, which is huge.
That's huge. That's a lot. No, this is all great stuff. And I think we're all ready to see a demo of this working in action. Can you maybe walk us through how MMS for long text messages work?
Yeah. So let's look at an example of a simple create message request that will be sent to Twilio's messaging API. And it includes a to field, which is nothing but the phone number to which the message is being sent to. And the from field, which is the messaging service SID, and a message body, which in this case is a long text consisting of about 480 characters. So upon executing this create message request, the message is delivered to the phone and it appears as shown on the right. So this message was sent over a carrier that offers concatenation services, and hence it looks like a single long message. But in reality, there were about 4 segments and the sender was billed for 4 segments. So now let's see what happens when we leverage the MMS for long text feature. And I'm going to execute the same create message request, but this time let's include the new API parameter, send as MMS, and set it to true in the request. Upon executing this create message request, you see the message on the phone, and although it looks identical to the first one, the difference is that this time the message was sent as an MMS message, and it consists of a single segment.
Got it. That's great. Thank you so much for that demo. I think it's really obvious to all the developers out there how easy this new feature is to implement. And I'm really excited to see how everyone out there uses this in their own applications. Could you maybe share with us some parting thoughts of anything that you want to tell everyone out there about this new feature?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on how simple it is for developers and customers to leverage this new feature. And in addition to the simplicity, adopting this new feature will have a huge impact on costs and volumes and the end user experience. So it is a great feature, and we're really happy to have delivered to this feature to all the developers out there.
Well, thank you so much for being here on this quarterly release webinar to show off this new release. It was great to have you. And if you want to learn more about this new feature, you can go to twilio.com/blog/MMS for long text to learn more and get started today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So this may be old news to you, but if you remember back in Q4 of 2021, we released Functions, Headers, and Cookies support. Well, Functions, Headers, and Cookies is now generally available. And during this portion of the webinar, I'm going to be covering how you can restrict access to your Twilio function using headers. So if you remember back less than a year ago, before our Functions, Headers, and Cookies release, you were unable to get access to these request headers, which meant that it was really tough for developers to do some standard authentication and authorization in their applications. And along with headers, the release supported cookies as well. So if you're using Runtime Handler 1.2.0 or later, you already have full access to cookie support, which can enable you to build session management directly into your application. Some examples of these sorts of applications could be as simple as saving an auth token or creating a shopping cart experience. I want to call out a great tutorial that we have listed on our documentation that walks you through how to protect your function with basic authentication. And as a developer, you want the JavaScript that you're running to be protected, and you don't want bad actors to be able to gain access to your credentials or payloads that you're sending out. You can see that in the code that if you can input your Twilio username and password. And better yet, you can even use environment variables so your credentials are secured. And then in the code, we can pass the auth header variable, which allows us to return a callback that checks to see if the callback is authorized or not authorized. There's also another great tutorial on the sidebar, which will walk you through JSON Web Tokens. You can also use JSON Web Tokens to protect your functions using the new request headers release. Now, if you haven't used a JSON Web Token before, it's abbreviated as JWT. And this is pronounced JOT, funny enough. And there's a great website called jot.io. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there's an encoded side. And you can pass this token to your client. And this token, it usually contains some information about what you can and can't do, and it's signed by a 256-bit secret. JOTs are a great way to allow client-side applications to connect to APIs that are server-side. So where you don't want to pass the username and password across, that's really what these JOTs are used for. There's actually a great tutorial on how to authenticate against it. If you go up to the top right of the documentation page, there's a tutorial on how to authenticate function requests using bearer authorization and JOTs. You'll notice that on the first line of this tutorial that we import the JOT library, which is an open source library available in JavaScript. And then on line 34, we're going to use the jot.verify function, and we're going to pass the auth token and secret. This is checking to make sure it's signed by the proper actor. You'll also see that in the case of an unauthorized response, we'll pass a 401 error to the API consumer. So if you go to our documentation libraries page, you'll see that we have helper libraries for your server, and we also have client-side libraries as well. And the way that we get the client-side SDKs to authenticate with Twilio is we have them initialized with an access token. And this initialization token is actually a JOT. So what's great about this new feature and why it saves developers time was that in the past, you'd have to go spin up your own server to generate tokens securely. And in the past, you wouldn't want to do this with a Twilio function because it was a public endpoint that anyone could hit. But now with request headers being built directly into the product, suddenly you don't need these token servers that you would have previously had to set up, which is incredibly powerful for developers. So now that you know about this release, I can't wait to see what you build on your local client-side and server-side applications. And if you want to learn more about request headers, please visit the documentation page by going to twilio.com/docs/runtime, and then go to the quick start and basic auth. So everyone, that concludes our Q2 release webinar. We'd like to invite you to submit any questions in the comments section and chat, and we'll try to answer them all. Additionally, we really want your feedback on what you thought of this webinar and how we can improve it next quarter. So please visit the survey link, rate the webinar and speakers, and tell us what you liked, and you'll be entered to win a chance to get some free Twilio swag. Thanks again so much for watching. We can't wait to see what you build. See you next quarter for our Q3 2022 release webinar.